This is Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley, a podcast that explores the feelings, emotions, and experiences of what it means to be human in this world. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references if you need support.
And before you dive in, please like, subscribe, comment, share with anyone you think might also connect with today's session. Our goal is to reach as many people as possible, and we are endlessly grateful for your continued support. So, let's get to it.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to yet another Sessions with Sara Cate and Ashley. I am Sara Cate.
I'm Ashley.
Today, the energy is excited in this place today because we are going to do a little tippy toe, a little foray into a pas de bourrée for us dancers out there, into online dating and the experience of it, and to really just have a playful and thoughtful conversation about kind of normalizing the craziness with which online dating is, right? Like it just is kind of bonkers.
It's not normal.
It's well, and okay, so like also what is normal?
Well, good.
Okay. Yeah. But, it just really is, it's such a curious time to be alive and, try to forge connections in this really kind of synthetic and sometimes disconnected way, even though it's preaching a conversation about connection and like, oh, you can, there's a million people you can connect with and look at all of the different opportunities there are. And yet, so many, it's, again, I don't want to use the phrase gaslighting has gotten really sexy and I, to some degree, overused, but I do think like all of the apps and even the conversations about online dating, that you should enjoy it, that you're supposed to be getting something really fulfilling out of it, that it should be easy or fun or simple.
Yeah.
It really isn't true. I didn't experience that. I've done it a few times, 2 times actually, and for very short increments because it overwhelmed my nervous system, to be completely honest. And like, that there was this push in this story that I needed to be out there, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I needed to be exposing myself to like opportunities. And yet it overwhelmed the absolute hell out of me and made me really anxious and triggered a lot of my shit. So I think Ashley and I just wanted to have a conversation, normalizing some of that discomfort and craziness that exists there.
And some people really enjoy that process also. Like some people really do enjoy online dating, and that's really awesome. I think when we talk about like, and when I mentioned like it's just not normal in terms of like how humans in general form relationship and connection, it's in person, it's face to face, and that's where relationships are really nurtured, in that like presence of another human. Do I think that an online platform like that might introduce us to people that we wouldn't have ever come into contact with? Yeah, probably. Well, yes, I know that that's true from personal experience, right? And it just is really hard sometimes because, and she mentioned this a little bit, like there is a perceived intimacy that can come from it that is maybe it can encourage us to really become attached or connected
or exposed
to like a person who maybe that isn't ultimately the best thing. And I think we talked about this prior to the episode. I think maybe before we go any further, because we want this just to be like kind of more of like a fun conversation about like
Yeah.
some of the like some of the like you'll hear some of our stories.
Yeah.
But safety is
Paramount.
yes, like there is
Number one.
and like we said before we started recording this, it sucks so much that we even have to say this, but unfortunately, this is the world that we live in. And so we strongly encourage you, if you are participating in online dating, that if you do go on a date, you like somebody knows where you are, when and where you're meeting, what the name of that person is, that you maybe have some discernment about like who gets your number and who doesn't. And that if there are concerns that you take them serious, right? And that you don't just think that our spidey sense is on. And so if something feels off, go with that. Don't try to override yourself. And also then in terms of that, we hear the term getting ghosted a lot. And if there is feelings of unsafety or like you're just not feeling it, you also don't owe that person anything if you cut off communication. And that's okay. You don't have to like worry about what they're thinking or if you're going to hurt their feelings. This is about like keeping you safe.
Yeah.
And not how the other person is going to think of you if you do cut off communication abruptly like that. Now, if we want to talk further about ghosting, I have my own feelings about that because there are times yes, you have known this person for 4 days via texting back and forth, seeing 3 pictures of them on an app, right? They don't owe you anything. They don't know you. You don't know them. Do I think that sometimes it gets to the point where like you could just also be an adult and be like, hey, I'm not feeling this. Cool. Like that is really awesome. A lot of people don't have the tools to do that. And it just sometimes it's like, who cares? Like it just wasn't, the conversation wasn't flowing. You don't have to give them an explanation of why you don't want to talk to them. So I don't know. Ghosting is a really interesting. Now, if it's ghosting after you guys have like gone on dates and you've like starting to form a relationship, then I'm more on the side of like, hey, you could just have a conversation with this person. However, if somebody ghosts you, that really tells you all you need to know about them, right? Like there's really no need to have any kind of like curiosity because like if you guys were forming a relationship and that happened, like clearly the maturity level maybe isn't there, right?
Or the emotional attunement.
Like it just, so you kind of like learn everything you need to know. And I mean, this can be like so convoluted, right? Because then we can get into like the whole, like you don't take anything personally, which is like really good advice and also really hard because that has nothing to do with you, quite honestly, but it's hard not to in those situations take it personally, and we fully understand that. Yeah.
Well, and when Ashley's talking about the safety thing, like I don't think we can hear it enough that like, and we can't be reminded enough that while you have been having conversations with this person, while you have some familiarity to their story, there still isn't maybe an actual tangible understanding of who this person is. But our brains, because we know their story, we know their name, we know what they do, we know what they like, the things that they don't like, like to some degree that perceived intimacy might inhibit our guard and might drop some of our walls that we would otherwise have in place. And I think just the gentle reminder that you get to take your time and you get to organize, your interaction the way that you want to organize your interaction. And then if you feel something, and like Ashley was saying, like your spidey sense or just the interest isn't there, whatever it is, to decide to do something different. Like if this was what you had organized and then you don't want to do it, okay. Right. And to recognize that doesn't feel great. Right. And again, this is coming back to a lot of the conversations that Ashley and I had, that like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. It is not comfortable to be rejected or to reject someone. It goes against our desire to be nice or kind or warm or well-intentioned, whatever it might be, right? And there is respect and to owed to ourselves first, and then the other to like not pour energy or give energy if energy doesn't want to go there, right? And so like to stay in alignment with yourself can be really hard in online dating because we know how shitty it feels to be like rejected or whatever it is. But what Ashley said, that's true, is that if that energy is not being reciprocated, if that person doesn't want to show up in the way that you're showing up, that is information for you to say, is this something I'm then going to give the energy towards? All of these are going to be opportunities for you to, and they were for me, to like work through what my stories were around my worth and my value and what I wanted and what I didn't want.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's just so many people at
Inundated.
once, right? Like you could match with 13 people in one day, right? And so like if you match with 13 people and 10 of them you don't continue the conversation with, if you're interpreting that as I've been rejected 10 times today, feels super shitty, right? But was that really a rejection? Because if you were meeting those people, all 13 of those people in a coffee shop, it would be much easier to discern sometimes if like, oh, okay, that's the person that I want to continue conversation with. It doesn't really matter about the other ones. You know what I mean? So it's like just the sheer number of people that you are around on these apps. Of course, there's going to be more conversations that don't flow. Of course, there's going to be more people that you are uninterested in versus interested in. And it's the same for everybody else on those apps.
It's quantity.
Yes.
Those apps are about quantity.
Yeah.
They are not about quality per se. Like, because now you can pay, right, to get more matches and more whatever. Like those apps are
roses.
Yeah, those apps are designed. Like I love it. The tagline of Hinge is like, we're totally gonna get sued probably, but like the tagline of Hinge is like the app that's meant to be deleted. And I'm like, yeah, except then you're like having people pay more and more in to get more and more hits, right? And it triggers the same shit in our brain that gambling does, right? Like it is an actual like part of our brain gets turned on that, you know, these like
it's a dopamine
hits of dopamine come in. And especially when it's around something as intense for a lot of us, which is wanting relationship, wanting connection, wanting love. And so then we get fed this story that the more we have access to, the more likely we're going to find that match, right? And that pair. And so coming back, you know, I think more than anything, Ashley and I having both of our lived experience around this, but coming back to the conversation that we have every single fucking session, which is like tuning in to what your system is really asking for and having a really strong connection and relationship to like how you want to be loved, developing that conversation. It doesn't make finding love easier, but when opportunity presents itself,
oh God,
Ashley about took us out. When an opportunity presents itself, what it does help is your discernment around, does this feel in alignment to what I want right now? And that might not be lifetime partnership love. That might be, I just am curious about dating and who I am as I date. Then great. Then you'll still be able to discern, is this for me or not?
Yes. And I want to say something about that because Hinge now has a thing where it says like, I don't actually remember it, like your relationship type. Well, it says like, I'm looking for, that's a thing I'm looking for. And then you like type like monogamy or whatever. And then it's my relationship type. And sometimes it says like, or they'll say like figuring that out right now. Believe that. Like they're literally telling you that they might not want a long-term relationship. If that is your goal, don't search for it in places that you probably aren't going to get it. You know, like if somebody's showing you that's what you believe, right?
Who said that?
What?
When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Was that Oprah?
I don't know, but she's lovely.
I mean, probably is.
Did she say that?
We'll just give her the,
Yeah,
we'll
we're
give
gonna
her the
give her
credit.
credit. But that's like,
It is. Believe them.
you'll save yourself a lot of heartbreak.
And also remember that, like, if this is something that you want, love was something that I wanted. So I had a lot of hope in it. I had a lot of like, I want, the possibility of it and the desire for it, right? When I was finally ready, to open myself up again to that, it was like, I got to be open, right? And I got to keep trying. And yet, then my internal compass, I was like, this isn't what you really want, kind of got skewed. And it's okay if we do that. It's okay if we believe something that
totally
isn't there, because we've all done it to some degree in our own way. And the power in this doesn't come from you controlling the environment that you're in. The power comes from you noticing and orienting to that person, how they speak, how they react to you, how they respond to you. Are they consistent? Are they not consistent? And what you do with that information.
Right.
Do you stay? Do you leave? Do you ask the question?
What your goals are, what you are desiring.
Like you get to be in charge of that. Am I giving my energy to this thing or am I not? So Ashley.
Yes.
Ashley recently has embarked on a little bit of a journey into the dating world. She's dabbling with dating.
Dabbling with dating.
That's going to be the name of this
I love that
episode.
Okay.
Sometimes we have a hard time figuring out the name, so I'm glad that just came up. That just did some of our work for us. So Ashley, in your dabbling, what do you feel like has been the biggest light bulb about getting back out there into the world as this woman that you are today? What is like whoa, this is new information for me because I've never been this woman dabbling with dating?
Yowza.
I know it's a big question.
That is a big question.
I just came up with it. She had no time to prepare.
That was a great off the top of the dome, Sara Cate, coming up with these questions.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, one of us is. No, I consented.
I said, what am I allowed to ask?
Anything.
Okay.
Except for this. No.
The thing I didn't know you were going to ask.
So, yeah, no, but okay. So I think what it is that where I'm at now in my life, I actually feel like I can support myself in staying in alignment better than I have ever been able to before. And that has been something where it's also been really interesting because I find myself being the one to reach out more than I did before, because I was like, no, I actually like that, or I'm actually curious about that. So I'm going to ask questions, or I'm going to say hi, or I'm going to do whatever.
So you're like in the driver's seat a little bit more.
Yes.
Okay.
And when somebody, then likes my profile and then I have the opportunity to respond, I'm responding from a place where I feel like I never have responded before, in that, like, I'm really like studying myself and what I feel like when I mean, it's a profile, right? It's like whatever, 3 or 4 pictures and some answers to some
paragraphs.
questions.
Yeah.
Like there's not really a whole lot to go off of, but if my initial thing is like, I don't think so, then I don't have to say anything. Right. And I don't like beat myself up for that anymore. I don't have to say like, oh, but I want to be nice. Right. Like I want to be kind. And I think often people who, I think it can go both ways, but I think that it happens more often to people who don't have a penis, that they feel like they have to be like the cool girl. They have to be like the chill, like, I just want this person to like me. I have to show that I'm like worthy of like getting asked out on a date, or like to continue conversation, or like
I gotta say the right thing.
Profile. What should I say to make him think that I'm like cool?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't do that anymore. And it's actually become kind of like a challenge within myself of like, where are you responding from? Are you responding from this place of like, you need validation and you need attention right now? Or are you responding from a place of like, nope, this is who I am, and I'm going to give a straight up answer. And I've never been there before. And this is after years of work. I don't want this to sound like, oh, I just decided one day.
No.
Because I still struggle with it. I still have support. I'm still working through things. I think one of the things that we get told so often is that you have to be like healed in order to like be ready for a relationship. And that like that's unrealistic, right? And so like there are still things in my heart that are really hurting. And right now I'm still worthy of love. And like right now I'm still worthy of healing in relationship with somebody else if I choose.
Yeah.
And who I want that person to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's such good conversation, because it illuminates this innate desire to please and be desirable and chosen. And what I'm hearing that you're doing is you're making yourself desirable and chosen by yourself. You are saying, I am going to be me and choose myself in saying what I feel, asking questions, deciding what I want to share and what I don't, how much I'm opening myself up to this conversation or this meeting or whatever it is. Like I am choosing myself in that, which is different, I think, than a lot of what we've been taught and how we've had to organize ourselves in the world, specifically as women, which is to please, to be desirable, to be chosen,
to be like independent, but not too much.
Right.
To be like able to take care of ourselves, but
let them open the door.
Right. Or yeah, you can be successful, but not too much. Not too successful, because then you might hurt his ego. Or like you should be sexual, but not too much, because then you're a hoe. You should love your body, but don't show it off.
Don't flaunt it,
because then you're a hoe.
Well, and I mean, and this is, and obviously, you know, we're coming from, in this capacity, a heteronormative experience in this between Ashley and I. And I think that for the most part, for me, in having dated both men and women, it is a different experience when you're working with different genders around what criticisms, what actions are acceptable and not acceptable. And again, this isn't about a gender normative place, but what Ashley is speaking to is like, if you feel that you need to rearrange who you are, to change who you are, to diminish who you are, pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Because that you're setting the basis of what that interaction with that person is going to be. Now, again, this is like extremely difficult to do. I find myself editing myself in a lot of places in my life. And that comes from a deeply scared, tender part of me that's like, I don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be abandoned.
Yeah.
And what, unfortunately, the dating apps can do, like Ashley was saying, if the conversation's not going anywhere, all of a sudden we're just unmatched and then they're gone, it is going to some degree, potentially trigger a little bit of that over and over and over again. Even if you had probably no interest in that person, them stepping away, or even you stepping away, is going to bring some of that up. And so recognizing that we're dealing with a degree of that discomfort in this world, be it dating face-to-face, be it online dating, whatever it is, be it in relationship, we're dealing with our attachment wounding. So coming back to having compassion and grace for yourself as you're navigating this process, you know, truly, single or in relationship,
Yeah.
we have to really take care of our own hearts in this, because our primal fear is being alone. It is biologically hardwired in us to be safe in community. And then even more so as female bodies, like we're not far out from women not being able to have a bank account without, that's still in our close generational DNA, right? So there is something really, really strong that lives inside of us that says, I need to have a mate. I need to have a partner. And to not discount that when you're considering this, and to not then allow for some of that natural fear and like discomfort to come up when you're in this process of like coming towards something and then not having it work out, and then coming towards something and then not having it work out. I mean, I think our conversation, like, thinking back decades, right, of like, I can remember hearing like women say around me, like, you just got to kiss a lot of frogs, right? And like, I think that has exponentially increased because we have access to more. So I think, some of the conversations around this are difficult to like figure out what's true and what's not, because we just have access to more now. Like, is it actually more? Like, maybe back in the 90s when you just went on dates, right? You would go on 10 bad dates a year, 12 bad dates a year, 13, 20 bad dates a year. Now you're interacting with 16 people at once, and maybe all 16 of those conversations don't go anywhere. And then the next day there's 10 more. So like, the reality is we're having more exposure to activating this part in ourselves that's like, there's just nothing out there.
Yeah.
Or just, I'm having so few hits. When really it's just kind of the pace in which online dating gives you content.
Yeah. What else you want to know? What's coming?
So,
what's coming?
How do you feel? Like, where do you trust that you're giving enough information that feels good to you? And where do you stop, right? Like, what information feels like, I don't know this person, so I'm not going to trust them with like all of these stories about who I am, or all of this information about who I am. Like, how do you find that line of what feels like enough to share that doesn't feel like you're hyperextending or overexposing yourself and exhausting your energy? Where's that kind of balance?
Yeah. I think to some degree it's different with every person. And I go off of what I feel in my body. I literally just had a conversation with a guy that I met on Hinge about this, because when I tell people, the typical questions are like, what do you do for work? What do you do for fun? Blah, 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 blah. I don't have my job on my profile. One, because most people don't understand what it is. And two, because when people find out what I do, it's like an invitation for them to ask really inappropriate questions. Because when they hear like pelvic floor therapist or sexuality counselor, they can sometimes interpret that as an invitation that I want to see their dick. Or that I should just send them pictures, or that I just am on there to like talk about sex, or they want to talk about like what vaginas feel like. And like, that to me is really disgusting. Usually my response is like, oh, this must be the first time you've interacted with a female before.
Bye.
Or oh, who raised you? Because yikes, you came from a woman. Anyways, that's my pet peeve. So, but the conversation came up around what I did, and I gave a little bit, but then the person asked thoughtful questions, and I was like, oh, like about, okay, so tell me about how you help people. And I was like, oh, that's different. And that there was some genuine interest in like, oh, like, what does your day look like? Like, more about, still, it was more about me as a person versus like, oh, cool, anyways, so annoying. And so that was like, I could give this person more information and it feels okay. And it was like, it led to then a conversation that, to be honest, I've never actually had with a man, like in that way.
Yeah.
And I was like super open about that. I was like, listen, I've never heard a man say that. I've never had this kind of conversation with a man who was like, I guess, maturity. But then it was like also cool because then there was a give and take from both of us, right? And he said, he goes, well, I can't like take all the credit because I got to learn from a really amazing woman. And I was like, the fact that there's awareness there, right? And so now it's conversations like that, and it's conversations like another guy who was like, I kind of said what I did, but again, I don't give a whole lot of information. Who immediately responded, so what do I got to do to get a private session with you? Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
And there's so much of that, right? So that's easy to see.
Yes.
That one is just like painted with the color of like, get out.
Yes.
But this,
so
the thoughtful question.
Yeah. And so like that easy, right? The thoughtfulness of like, oh, wow. Okay. Like I actually am interested in answering this question.
Yeah.
Like there's actually part of me who wants to give more information. And then there's like the spots in the middle that can sometimes be kind of gray. And like, maybe it's not like so offensive or just ridiculous, like the one example I gave, but maybe there's like, how do I describe it? You can kind of tell they're just like going through the motions, right? Like they just are trying to like give you enough to kind of like keep you going. Those are the ones that are harder to discern because you're kind of like, are you for real? Or are you just like what's actually your goal though? And now, before I would try to be like, okay, I'm going to answer this how I think that they want me to answer, or I'm just going to answer and like, whatever. And now I'm more like, if I am still curious, if I'm still like, I'm unsure, but I want more information. That's how I should put this. I'm gaining information. That's how I go into those situations is I'm just here to gain more information. And what I do with that information, I'm going to figure out later. I don't have to figure out right in this moment, unless it's like a quick see ya, like the one example I gave. But I turn it back to myself and I'm the one who asks more questions then, so that I'm like, because if you're not going to reciprocate when I ask this question that requires a little bit more thought, then like, I know, then I'm like, okay, I'm just not interested in this conversation. Like I want to be my goal for dating is not a hookup. Right. And that's like, for right now, like that's my goal. And so I'm not going to entertain something that somebody who has that goal. And if that's your goal, that's totally fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But for me right now, that just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm investing energy into something that I'm going to turn around and be like, did I actually even want that though? Did I actually like that?
Yeah.
I'm asking those questions now before I move further. And again, if you don't know, you have to ask more questions and see how they respond. And then you get to make a more informed decision.
Totally. And I think like, even playing into that a little bit more too, what you're saying is like your goal in this is to not just hook up with somebody, right? To go on a date and like, and that being someone's goal, that's their goal, right? And like that comes through, that can be kind of figured out through conversation, and like, because what we're also talking about here is like different dating styles and like what we actually want out of it is important. And like, sometimes there's actually some really good apps out there. There's one called Field that is like a sex positive, like kink positive app. And that is for people who want their kind of like preferences and desires and interests out there, right? And like to not have shame around it and to not mislead people in being like, I want, a monogamous lifetime long relationship. Like that isn't some people's goals, and that's fine, right? Like we just get to be honest about it, but there's so much shame about being honest about that, and like even my partner and I met online, and I was, like I said, I had done it for brief stints because I just got so overwhelmed because I can have a conversation with anybody, and I would find myself just like leaning into that. And then I would have these like long conversations, and I don't get to talk to my friends enough. I don't get to talk to my like my family enough, people I love enough, like, because this, my job is very social. And so my social battery, isn't what it used to be. And so dating was just like really overwhelming for my system, because I was like, I don't have anything left. And so having all of these long conversations just got really tiring, because then I was like, now I actually don't even want to, like, I don't know, I want to meet one person, but I've spent time talking to 10. Right. And so that, even for me, like with my partner, it was like a very easy conversation. And it wasn't totally like, we need to find out so much about each other before we meet. It was more like, do you want to meet? Does this feel like a good match, just based off of a few, brief interactions? And again, safety came into play. Like, I had all of my like friends track my location. Like, I was like, okay, who knows who this person is in the world? And he turned out to be this wonderful human being. Right. And that isn't always the case. Right. And it wasn't the case for me for a lot of the time spent doing this. But it just, to remember that you have your own style. And if you don't want to have a pen pal situation, okay. And if you really need that to feel safe, okay, good, do that. If the conversation is flowing, like Ashley was talking about, like, I love that you were just able to like sense your own experience in that and be like, he's asking thoughtful questions, so I want to give thoughtful answers, and I want to ask thoughtful questions, right? Like, that's just like Ashley said at the very beginning of that, it's kind of person specific.
It is.
And interaction specific.
Yeah. And, again, right, it's all about gaining information, because the more information I gain about them, the more information I gain about myself, because I'm really learning like, nope, that's not what I'm not into that. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm not here for it. Or, wow, okay, there are people capable of having the type of conversation that I want to have about different topics, right? About different things in life, like sharing life experiences in different ways, right? And so that then gives me information moving forward of like, okay, that's something that's really important for me. How am I showing up like that for myself? And then how am I showing up in these interactions like that? And if it's falling towards it's not in alignment anymore, am I integrity with myself?
Yeah.
To maintain that safety and like that trust within myself that I'm going to listen to that. Which, like, we all have done this, right? Like, we all have like told ourselves that like we should just like try a little bit more, right? Or like all of that, right? Like we've all done that, and that's okay. And if I end up having a conversation longer with a person that like I ultimately was like, that was
a waste.
Yeah, then like then it is what it is, right? Like that's just what happens.
Use it as, like Ashley said, use it as information. Wow, and that's what I had to do. Like, I was like, when the very first time that I went on, I was like spending all of this time and energy, and because I thought I had to, and I didn't know who I was when I first started dating as this adult woman. So for me, a lot of it was trial and error. And it was like, oh, I didn't really love how that interaction ended, or I ghosted, or I was ghosted, or whatever it was. And I was like, some of these things don't feel good to me, but I had to go through the muck of them not feeling good in order for me to get more and more information and organize myself differently when I did it again. And it looked very different. And so I think remembering that, like, this might be a work in progress. Maybe what you start on the app for, it evolves into something else, right? Maybe it does evolve to more like, I just want to casually date. Or maybe it evolves to like, I thought I wanted to casually date, and now I'm like super interested in something else. Like, whatever it might be, like just giving permission for, the process and the experience of it, and to just check back in. For me, it was like, I take break. Like, I needed that break, and it didn't mean I wasn't trying, because I wasn't on the apps, and I needed somebody to say that, because pretty much the story is that's fed to a lot of us in the single world is like, either be out all of the time or be on the apps. That is the way that you're going to meet people. So if you're not doing either one of those things, you're not quote unquote trying. And that is really dangerous. That's really dangerous, you know, a really dangerous narrative to sell, because it puts that responsibility of like not trying hard enough on us.
And also, I was like bombarded yesterday with somebody who I knew meant well, but they were like, who do we know that we can set you up on? And I was like, literally no one. And she goes, no, we've got to know someone. And I was like, but I'm okay on my own. And it was like this back and forth of like, no, you got to. And I kind of like the snarky part of me wanted to be like, I don't actually need somebody in order for you to think that I'm complete, right? Like I wanted to go into this whole thing where she just like, you know, she like wants me to be in love.
Well,
right? Like, she wants me to like, whatever. But that unfortunately, again, is a narrative that if you're single, you're missing something, you're not complete. And when we participate in dating, believing that about ourselves, we show up much differently than if we are okay with who we are. Like I'm good. With the exception of reaching things in the tall cabinets, I can do anything. Like sometimes I got to climb the aisles at the grocery store to get what I want, but I've learned how to do it. It's fine. Right. But like,
but other than that, she can survive on her own.
But no, but like, that's like a joke. Right. But like,
it's real.
It's like, I'm okay. Like, I don't need, I think there are parts of my life where that was what I believed though, that I needed somebody, or that something was wrong with me because I wasn't in a relationship. And the journey of getting to know myself is what flipped that. It wasn't that like, I mean, yes, when you get to know yourself, you ultimately will find out that you start to like yourself more and that you start to love yourself more. But it wasn't me saying like, okay, I just have to practice self-love, because that was bypassing all of the work that I actually had to do. It was me deciding that I was worth getting to know and then moving that way, because I don't want to date if I'm not feeling okay with myself anymore, where before I would, but I don't want to feel like that anymore. I just don't want to feel like that anymore. Like I said, like there are parts of me that are so tender still that will find healing over time, right? But probably in the presence of another human and probably in the presence of a human who is showing me unconditional love. And that's okay. Like that is part of being human. And I'm going to help that person heal some things that didn't get healing before. But I'm not willing anymore to sacrifice my, how do I say that? Like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm not willing to sacrifice my heart anymore and abandon what it needs from me in order to just put myself out there. Like, in order to get access to it, I got to really be interested. And that has been like the most powerful transformation.
I mean, drop the mic. That is, I mean, Ashley, that is such
Sarah
strong wisdom.
Well,
like it just is. It's just this, because it isn't shaming. Like I love that you said I didn't have to be whole to be in a relationship. And I also am whole on my own to some degree, right? Like knowing yourself and knowing the tenderness of your heart, the hurt parts of your heart, and the really strong, courageous parts of your heart, right? That is wholeness. And to not abandon that in this process, whatever that means for Ashley, it's going to be very different for me, and it's going to be very different for you, right? But like to keep our standards of what we want connected to us and not far from us, to keep our safety as a priority, and then to let ourselves be open to what is, right? Like, because if we trust ourselves to some degree and we know that we're safe, we will show up so differently in that moment. We won't be in this like fight, flight, scarcity mode of like, okay, I gotta take whatever's in front of me, right? We can just actually sit with like, is this person in front of me somebody that I'm interested in interacting with anymore? Right? And like moving from that place rather than that fear-based place. And that comes from all of this programming and all of these old stories. And so defining and connecting to that relationship with yourself in this, again, to have whatever type of relational orientation you want in front of you. It doesn't matter. It's yours to decide. And that comes from knowing and understanding to some degree who you are. Like, I can't believe they let me date when I was 20 years old. I mean, like, legitimate. Like, I'm like, I mean, I was a reckless human being at 37 when I was dating. Like, it just, I was learning so much about myself and learning about myself through that process. And it didn't mean at the time that I knew it was going to yield something that I wanted, but like Ashley said, I was using it to gather a shit ton of information about myself. And and maybe that takes some of the pressure off of it too. Of like, I want to learn, I'm going to use dating to learn who I am, you know, and like what I want. Because if you've organized yourself around what you've, you know, had to for safety for so long, you might not know what you actually want. Right. And that might be different than what you need. But, you know, all of you out there, wherever you are in your process, please take care of your dear heart and know that this is deeply a process. And be it thinking about starting to date again, be it dating again, be it in a relationship, be it in a long-term relationship, there's shit. It's hard. Relationships with humans are hard. And so give yourself some compassion in that process, right? Wherever you're at in that, because we're all trying to figure it out from typically some attachment trauma. And so if you get ghosted, we are here. We've had it.
Listen, you want any other funny stories? I got you.
Ashley's got some. I got some.
People are wild, man.
People are wild.
People are
I like that.
wild.
I think that's the good place to just remember that. If you're going to dabble with dating, remember that people are wild and share your location. The power just went out.
Yeah, the power went out. So I guess that's our cue to go. They literally turned the lights off on us.
So
power's out.
And so are we. So thanks for joining us, and use this as courage to keep going and keep getting information about yourself. And, you know, you do you, but do it safe.
Okay, guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye.